أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات بيجي محمد وآله Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The ayah that I recited is a very known verse, especially in the month of Ramadan. Chapter 2, verse number 183, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing that those who believe or those who have faith, indeed Allah has prescribed fasting upon you the way He did on the people before you so that you may attain taqwa. Now the reason reciting this ayah is that I wanted to talk about in this Shab-e-Jummah and in this Majlis the concept which has been floating around and has picked up in the recent past, and that is the concept of fasting on the day of Ashura. And we see that there are differences of opinion amongst the school of thoughts that as to is it wajib to fast, is it mustahab to fast, is it mubah to fast, is it makruh to fast, or even if it is haram to fast on this day. This is probably the only fast about which you would find narrations from wujub till haram, and in between as well, where there is mustahab, makruh or mubah. And I will inshallah quote all of those differences of opinion from the difference of schools of thought that we have in this regard. We see first of all that this phenomena began most recently when not the Ahl Sunnah but more so the Wahhabis, they started propagating that this fast on the day of Ashura is something which Prophet had propagated, which Prophet was something that he himself in his time used to perform, and he had done ta'keed upon the performance of this fast. So it wasn't something which was just, an act that Prophet would occasionally do. Rather, it was something that he did on regular basis, and then he exhorted the mu'mineen to perform that. This is coming from the Mufti of Saudi Arabia by the name, he's the Ali Saud. He says Sheikh Abdul Aziz ibn Abdullah Ali Sheikh. He's the Mufti of Saudi Arabia. This is his fatwa in this regard. He says, فَقَدْ ثَبَتَ عَنِ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وآله أنه كان يصوم يوم عاشوراء. That Nabi used to, this is sabit, that Nabi used to perform or fast on the day of Ashura. وَيَرْغَبُ النَّاسِ فِي صِيَامِهِ. And also did encourage others to go ahead and fast on Ashura as well. لأنه يوم نجى الله فيه موسى وقومه. This is the day that in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala najja Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave najat to Hazrat Musa and to his qawm as far as their salvation is concerned from Fir'aun and those of the followers of Fir'aun. So he said, وَأَهْلَكَ فِيهِ فِرْعَوْنَ. Fir'aun died on this day, his qawm was perished on this day. فَيُسْتَحَبُّ لِكُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ وَمُسْلِمَةٍ صِيَامُ هَذَا الْيَوْمِ شُكْرًا لِلَّهِ. So therefore it is mustahab for all of the Muslimin and Muslimat to fast on this day, thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shukran lillah, being grateful towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَهُوَ يَوْمُ الْعَاشِرِ مِنَ الْمُحَرَّمِ. This is the 10th day from the month of Muharram. وَيُسْتَحَبُّ أَن يَصُومَ قَبْلَهُ يَوْمًا وَبَعْدَهُ يَوْمًا. And also mustahab to fast a day before it and a day after it as well. He's basing his concept on the hadith in regards to which Rasulullah said that it is mustahab to fast because he used to fast. The reason behind it, because Hazrat Musa and his qawm was given salvation and victory over Fir'aun and the qawm of Fir'aun. So indeed it is a big day, indeed it is a day for celebration. So you should go ahead and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in celebrating and also thanking him in this regard. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, because of the time, keeping the time in mind, I'm going to keep it very concise and get right to the point. Second is also from one of the muftis of the faith of Ahl Sunnah. His name is Abu Khalid, and he's from the Islamic Seminary of Ahl Sunnah from Zahedan. He says the following, he says, Ashura is an important day, and following the Sunnah of Rasulullah, it is highly recommended by him that Rasulullah used to fast on this day based on the hadith from Ibn Abbas. who said, which is quoted in Bukhari, that Rasulullah came to Medina and he saw the Jews fasting. And when he saw the Jews were fasting, he asked them that as to why were you fasting? And right away the Jews replied by saying to him that this is the day in which we have heard, in which we have received that Hazrat Musa accomplished something. He got the victory over Fir'aun, and therefore it is mustahab, and we celebrating it. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore we go ahead and fast on this day. Therefore Prophet ordered Muslims to also do the fasting on this day by saying that Ana ahaqqo, and that I'm closer to Musa than any one of you. My relationship to Musa is closer than any one of you. Therefore, if anyone deserves to fast on this day, it is me. Therefore, I will fast from this day on, and my companions and my ummah will also fast from this day on. He says, Sumu yawma ashura wa khalifu fihi yahud. Fast on this day of Ashura, but have some difference with the Yahud. Why? Fast a day earlier as well, and the fast day afterwards as well. So fast on the 9th and as well as on the 11th, but also make sure that you fast on the 10th of the month of Muharram. There are differences of opinion of fasting on Ashura. Some believe that it was mustahab, as I said before. Some believe that it is actually, makruh. Some believe to the extent that it is, wajib. Some believe to the extent that it is haram. We will go ahead and quickly mention some of these to you very quickly. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So the division of the discussion will be in 3 parts. Although I'm mentioning 3 parts, but don't think that it's going to be too lengthy. First is we'll look at the narrations of Ahlul Bayt denouncing the fasting on the day of Ashura. Second, we'll look at the sayings of the Shia scholars as far as their rebuttals and refuting the claims by the Ahl Sunnah ulama, and fast of Ashura near Ahl Sunnah as well as their scholars. This will be the ram of inshallah our discussion. First, that the selection where the narrations from Ahlul Bayt have occurred. We'll look at, and you'll understand, I'll only recite a couple of ahadith in front of you as to how strongly Masumeen have said do not fast on this day. The reason behind it. You will say, well, a person might come up and say, fasting, Quran says, Kutiba alaykum as-siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. Fasting is a mustahab act. Aside from Ramadan, if one fasts seeking nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's nothing wrong with it. That is understood. But when you fast with intentions other than that, then the same fast becomes haram. The same way, Masjidun ussisa ala taqwa, the ayat of Quran says, the masjid which is based and established on the concept of piety and taqwa, and taqwa, it is important that you go ahead and stand in this masjid. But the masjid which was not established on the basis of taqwa, you should not stand in this masjid. You should not establish that masjid, and you should not pray in that masjid. Which masjid was that? Masjid-e-Ziarat, which was built. I talked about it earlier, so I'm not going to go into the details of that. How it was built by the munafiqun, and the ayat of Quran was revealed in this regard, and Prophet went ahead and said, do not pray in this mosque. So the concept, same thing goes with Habil and Qabil. What did he say? إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only accepts from those who are muttaqeen. So as long as there's taqwa behind the act, as long as there's taqwa behind the actions even prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that act is something which is acceptable. Otherwise, that act is not worth anything. That is in regards to the support, as to if someone comes up says, why not fast? Fasting is mustahab. If one wants to fast, aside from those days which it is haram to fast, for example, first day of Shawwal or 10th of, for example, Zil Hijjah, that is for a reason. Why can't we fast on any other days? This is the reason behind it. If it's done for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that act all of a sudden is not considered to be, not only it's not recommended, it is actually recommended to stay away from such an action. We have the first hadith from Muhammad ibn Muslim, was Zurara ibn Ayun, from our 5th Imam, Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, كَانَ صَوْمُهُ قَبْلَ شَهْرِ رَمَضَانِ فَلَمَّا نَزَلَ شَهْرُ رَمَضَانِ تُرِكْ. This is in مَنْ لَا يَحْضُرُ الْفَقِيهِ. That this was a fast which was done before Ramadan. Once the fasting in the month of Ramadan became wajib, it was nullified, it was, avoided, it was abandoned. At least from this hadith, we also learned that in Shia ahadith, fasting was there. So we're not denying the completely that fasting was not there. It might have been there before. So according to the hadith, which is in Man La Yadurul Faqih, fifth Imam is saying, fasting on this day was there before Ramadan, but after Ramadan, it was avoided, it was nullified. Secondly, from our fifth Imam, he says, Sawmun matrukun bin nuzul shahr Ramadan wal matruku bid'atun. This is where some of our scholars deduce that it is actually haram to fast. Why this hadith right here? This is Sawmun matruk. It was a psalm, it was a fast which was avoided, matruk, tark, nasikh, mansukh. You know the ayat of nasikh and mansukh. If a hukum comes, the previous hukum is nullified. This was matruk after the month of Ramadan became wajib. And therefore that which is matruk, that which has been told to be abandoned, is considered to be bid'ah. And therefore do not indulge yourself into the bid'ah. This is the second hadith, again from Usul-e-Kafi in the Bab, Sawm Ashura. Third, from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, alayhi salatu wasalam. This is where Imam completes all of these other ahadith. Aside from mentioning what he had been mentioned by fifth Imam, he says, ذاك يوم قتل فيه الحسين. That was the day قتل فيه الحسين, in which Husain alayhi salatu wasalam was killed. فإن كنت شامتا فصم. This is where Imam very beautifully leaves it up to you. He said that's what the day Ashura is the martyrdom of Husain, and if you want to please Banu Umayyah, then go ahead and fast. If you want to go ahead and please Banu Umayyah, then go ahead and fast. It's up to you. But then he said, made another, because Banu Umayyah had made another. What did they do? They said, well, if we achieve victory over Husain, and if we are able to grab hold of this hukumat once again, and complete control of this hukumat, then we'll fast. You know how you make another? That if so and so things happens, then I'll go ahead and fast. Same another was made by Banu Umayyah, that if we attain victory, then we'll go ahead and make this day be the day of Eid, and we will fast on that day out of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being grateful. Imam says, if you want to go ahead and fast, go fast. You will be pleasing Banu Umayyah. You will not be pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Imam says, what is the reward of fasting on the day of Ashur? He goes even a step further ahead. This is in Usul-e-Kafi as well, in the same volume 4, hadith number 6. It says, in this regard, it says, صوم يوم عاشوراء فقال من صامه كان حظه من صيام ذلك اليوم حظ ابن مرجان وآل زياد. He said, the one who fasts on this day, his reward will be same, the reward that was given to Ibn Marjana, Ibn Ziyad, and Al Ziyad. What was the reward of Al Ziyad? A person right away asked, قُلْتُ وَمَا كَانَ حَظُّهُم مِّن ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمِ. What was the reward on that day, O Imam? Of what they had done. What is the reward that they're going to get? Imam said, النَّارُ أَعَاذَنَ اللَّهُ مِنَ النَّارِ وَمِنْ عَمَلٍ يَقْرُبُ مِنَ النَّارِ or يُقَرَّبُ مِنَ النَّارِ. The reward for them was hellfire. And so whoever fasts on this day, according to this hadith, Imam is saying, their reward will also be hellfire. May Allah keep us away from hellfire or things which bring us closer to the hellfire. So you see how step by step Imam is making this thing to be even severe and severe. So we see that second discussion part of the first part of the discussion was the ahadith from Masumeen. I can't go into further details. It'll be all night if we keep on mentioning these ahadith. Second part of the discussion is the view of Shi'i scholars in this regard. What do they say? Some of the Shi'i scholars, there are various saying. Some consider fasting on this day to be haram. For example, Marhooma Khurasani, or rather Khunsari, in his book Jami' al-Madarik, this is what he says. He says, this day, because jazma ba'du mutaakhir al-mutaakhirin bil hurmat tarjihan lin nusu. Some of the contemporaries or the previous scholars have considered fasting on this day to be haram. Why? Because he said, the reason is that he's mentioning, because of that hadith, Imam has said in regards to that how you are going to be pleasing Banu Umayyah in this. And so some of them have considered to be haram on this day. Salawat Beji Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He said, وَبِالْجُمْلَةِ فَإِنَّ دَلَالَةَ هَذِهِ الْأَخْبَارِ عَلَى التَّحْرِيمِ مُطْلَقًا. This is Hadaiq al-Nadhira, Muhaqqiq Bahrani as well considers fasting on this day to be haram as well. Thirdly, Marhooma Naraqi, in his Mustanad al-Shi'a, he says, فَالْحَقُّ حُرْمَةُ صَوْمِهِ فِي هَذَا الْجِهَةِ. It is haram to fast on this day. The reason that they're all giving is because it was matruk, and matruk is considered to be a bid'at, and therefore bid'at is something which is considered to be haram, and therefore you do not indulge yourself into the bid'ah. And so they all consider, these scholars as far as they're concerned, consider this fast to be haram. But we see all the majority of the contemporaries, the fuqaha of our time, even before or the time of some of you, maybe, for example, Ayatollah Burujardi, Ayatollah Hakim, Ayatollah Imam Khomeini, and so on and so forth. Those who have, Ayatollah Yazdi, for example, Sahib Urwa, and those people who have done their commentaries on Urwatul Wuthqa, majority of them consider fasting on this day not to be haram. Rather, they consider it to be makruh. So they have come down from the level of haram and hurmat, and they consider it to be makruh. Rather, they go ahead and say some consider fasting with the intention of grief and sadness, with the intention that you do not eat and drink until the time of Asr. And then once you perform Salatul Asr, you go ahead and eat or drink, eat some khaki shifa or drink some water, and you do not continue your fast until ghurub. They say, go ahead and perform this. This is something which is aqrab and closer to some of the ahadith that we have mentioned in front of you. And that is something which is the rivaj that you and I usually have been brought up doing, that on that day, what do? We do not fast. Rather, it is something which is considered to be a faqah, that you do not make the intention of fasting, and therefore you break it just before the time of ghurub or after the asr prayers. So this is something as far as some of our scholars have talked about. They're basing their opinion on the hadith which Shaykh Tusi has actually mentioned in his book Misbah al-Mutahajjid. He says, Abdullah ibn Sanan quoted from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. He said to Imam in regards to the fast on the day of Ashura, Imam says, وَلَا تَجْعَلْ صَوْمَ يَوْمٍ كَامِلًا. Do not make this to be a complete fast on the day of Ashura. وَلْيَكُنْ إِفْطَارُكَ بَعْدَ الصَّلَاةِ الْعَصْرِ. Go ahead and break your or fast or do iftar after the prayers of Asr. بِسَاعَةٍ عَلَى شُرْبَةٍ مِّن مَاءٍ فَإِنُّ ذَلِكَ الْوَقْتُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمِ. This is where the relief had come, as far as the all the shuhada had left, and water and other things were brought to the families of Ahlul Bayt as far as they were in Karbala. So this is basically what he's deriving, and their opinion from our scholars is also to go ahead and continue as a faqah rather than causing or making it that day to be a complete fast. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Third section is fast of Ashura near Ahl Sunnah as well as their scholars. In this regards, I will take maybe 10 minutes at max to go ahead and point out some of the ahadith that I had mentioned earlier by the Mufti of Saudi Arabia and the Mufti from Zahedan. Those two Muftis, their opinion based on the hadith that they had talked about, and what is our take on those ahadith. First hadith is that this was a practice before Islam. Even in the time of Jahiliyyah, this was something which was being done. And so this hadith is in Sahih Bukhari, volume 2, page number 250, hadith number 2002. It says, An Aisha, قالت كان يوم عاشوراء تصومه قريش في الجاهلية. The day of Ashura, Quraysh used to fast. Even in Jahiliyyah, in the time of ignorance, they used to fast. وكان رسول الله يصومه. And even Rasulullah used to fast. فَلَمَّا قَدِمَ الْمَدِينَ صَامَهُ. When he came to Medina, he fasted. وَأَمَرَ بِصِيَامِهِ. And he ordered people to go ahead and fast. فَلَمَّا فُرِضَ رَمَضَانَ تَرَكَ يَوْمَ عَاشُورَا. When Ramadan became wajib, because it came, the obligation of fasting in the month of Ramadan was in Medina. He said when Ramadan's fast became wajib, تَرَكَ يَوْمَ عَاشُورَا فَمَنْ شَاءَ صَامَهُ وَمَنْ شَاءَ تَرَكَهُ. Whoever wanted to fast, they would fast. Whoever didn't want to fast, they wouldn't fast. So in other words, this hadith tells us that it was a practice prior to Islam. That means Rasulullah in his time when he was living in Makkah, 13 years that he spent after Islam in Makkah. So prior to Islam and after Islam had come, 13 years in Makkah. And then once he migrated into Medina, even in Medina he used to fast and he ordered people to fast until the ayat that I recited, Kutiba alaykum as-siyam, was revealed and fasting became wajib. He continued fasting. Then at that time he stopped fasting. It was matruk at that point. According to this hadith, it was matruk. Matruk means it became something which was abandoned. But those who wanted to fast, they would fast. Those who didn't want to fast, they wouldn't fast. That's one hadith. Let's look at the same thing from Sahih Bukhari, right on the same volume, page 251, hadith 2004. That was hadith 2002. This is hadith 2004. So see how close they are. Yet look at the distance between the two as far as the contradiction is concerned. This hadith says, Haddasana Abu Muammar, Haddasana Abu al-Waris, ila akhir. It says Ibn Abbas is the last chain of the narrator. He says, Qadima an-Nabiyyu Medina, Prophet came to Medina, Fara'al Yahudu Tasumu Yawmu Ashura. He saw Jews fasting on the day of Ashur. Faqala ma hadha. In Arabic, if you know some Arabic, when a person says ma hadha, that means they do not have any clue about it. They're completely clueless and they're astonished and they're surprised. And you say, what is this? And literally, if you see something out of ordinary, you say, what is this? That is what ma hadha is. This is the word of hadith. Faqala ma hadha. What is this? Qalu hadha yawmun saleh. This is a very, a kind or good day. And therefore, hadha yawmun najjallahu bani Israel. This is the day when Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given salvation to Bani Israel, the children of Israel, min aduwwihim, from their enemies, fasamahu Musa. And therefore, Hazrat Musa fasted on this day. Qala Rasulullah. Rasulullah then said, Fana ahaqqu bi Musa minkum, fasamahu wa amara bisiyamihi. He said, then I'm closer than you to Hazrat Musa. He fasted and he told others to fast. Now compare these two hadiths. Volume 2, page 250, 251. Hadith 2002, Hadith 2004. One hadith from Hazrat Aisha saying that Rasulullah used to fast in the time of Jahiliyyat as well. He fasted even after Islam was brought in. 13 years in Makkah when he lived, he fasted. After migration, he fasted until the ayat was revealed and then he stopped fasting and it was matruk. This hadith, only 2 hadiths later, from another companion, Ibn Abbas, hadith says that Rasulullah came to Medina, saw Jews fasting, questioned with astonishment and surprise, what is this? As if he did not know what is happening. So he had no clue about it. What do you see between these two hadiths? One is saying Rasulullah used to fast. Second hadith is saying that Rasulullah had no idea about the fast on the day of Ashur. How do you combine these two? Well, the first hadith, if you look at the books of Rijal of Ahl Sunnah, we see, for example, Ibn Quttan, or we see, for example, Zahabi. What do they talk about? That first hadith. In the first hadith, there's a person by the name Hisham ibn Urwa. He says, Hisham ibn Urwa, he says, Quttan says, Innahu ikhtalata wa taghayyara. He says, Hisham was someone who mixed the ahadith and he changed the ahadith. Zahabi, another big Rajali, he says, Innahu nasiya ba'da mahfuzihi aw wahima. He forgot many of his things that he had memorized and then he imagined a lot of things. These are 2 of the major Rijalis from the Ahl Sunnah who are giving their opinion about Hisham ibn Urwa. Hisham ibn Urwa, who's one of the transmitters of that first hadith which said Rasulullah used to fast in the Zaman al-Jahiliyyat, fasted during the period of Islam in 13 years and fasted until this ayat was revealed in Medina. This hadith, on the other hand, is by Ibn Abbas, which says Rasulullah had no idea about it until he came to Medina. And then once he saw the Jews doing this, he went ahead and fasted and he told others to fast as well. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So even in their ahadith, we see that there's matruk, it's tark after the wujub of Ramadan. That is something, a similarity that you see in our hadith and in their hadith as well. I have that hadith in front of me as well, but I won't go into details. This is also in Sahih Bukhari, volume 2, page 226, hadith 1892, which talks about that how they had this thing about the fasting, وَأَمَرَ بِصِيَامِهِ, but فُرِضَ فَلَمَّا فُرِضَ Ramadan تُرِكَ. As soon as Ramadan became wajib, this practice was abandoned and it was no longer practiced. Now, the point that we want to derive and bring ourselves closer to, it says in another hadith, and this is the whole concept of ahadith. And again, you can't leave the ahadith. Why? Because Prophet said, I leave behind you, Quran and Ahlul Bayt. And then in regards to the ahkam fiqh, we have 4 things that we rely upon: Quran and the hadith of Rasul. As long as something is cleared and accepted and understood through Quran, hadith is no longer required. But if you cannot solve something through Quran, which you cannot even solve praying 5 times a day through Quran. There's only timings, but there's no method mentioned there. How do you learn how to fast? You learn through the hadith of Rasulullah. He says, pray as you have seen me praying. How do you perform the qunut? How do you go into the ruku? How do you do the sujood? What do you do this? Where you do this? All of those things we learn from Rasulullah as far as his hadith is concerned. So you can't leave a hadith either. And therefore, this hadith business is very, very important. We see that Prophet, according to one of these hadiths, ordered about fasting, but he himself never did. This hadith right here in Majma'u-Zawaid, Haythami in volume 3, page 186 says this: Amara bi sawmi Ashura, anna Rasulullah, indeed Prophet Muhammad, Amara bi sawmi Ashura, ordered about fasting on the day of Ashur, wa kana la yasumuhu, but he himself never used to fast. How is it that you associate something with Rasulullah that he's ordering other people to do, but he himself was not performing that action? Sort of like the prayer our brothers Ahl Sunnah performed during Ramadan, which was established by the second Khalifa, that he said it was a bid'atun hasana, it was a good bid'at. So there are different types of bid'at. It was a good bid'at, but he never himself, history cannot prove that he himself performed this. He himself never performed it. Kind of like the same thing which Majmu' Zawaid Haythami is saying, that Prophet ordered people to fast on Ashur, but he himself never did so. And this is not by any individual. Abu Sa'id Khudri or Khidri, he's the one who's narrating this hadith. Second, another tradition which is in complete contradiction with Quran. What is that tradition? This tradition, you will hear this tradition and you will say, wow, that this is something which is associated with Rasulullah. It says, again in Bukhari, in Sahih Bukhari, volume 4, page 269, hadith 3558. He says, Ibn Abbas is being narrating, وَكَانَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ يُحِبُّ مُؤَافِقَةَ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ فِيمَا لَمْ يُؤْمَرْ فِيهِ بِشَيْءٍ. That Rasulullah used to prefer to follow the people of the book, Ahl Kitab, in affairs where he has not been commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anything. So Allah has not said anything about fasting, but he would prefer to follow the Jews or the Christians in this regard. But the hadith says he used to follow them, especially the next hadith says, especially when it conflicted with the idol worshippers. So it was something that idol worshippers weren't doing, but Ahl Kitab were doing, because Ahl Kitab were the followers of the divine religion, Rasulullah would follow them. This goes completely against not just other ahadith in this regard, but also the ayat of Quran. It says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tattakhidul yahuda wan nasara awliya. Oh, those who believe. This is not just for mu'mineen. This is for the one who's Amir of mu'mineen as well. It's not just for you and I as mu'mineen, but Amir al-mu'mineen will also be following this. La tattakhidul yahuda wan nasara. How is it Prophet in regards to that which Allah has not ordered him? The Quran says, مَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. He does not say anything except what we ask him to say. وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَىٰ. O Prophet, you did not throw those pebbles. We were throwing them. Allah is taking responsibility for the actions of Rasulullah and the kalam of Rasulullah from Quran. He's telling him not to follow Yahud and Nasara. in their practices. Yet, this hadith is saying that Rasulullah preferred yuhibbu. This is in Sahih Bukhari, not any other book. I gave you the hawala. That Rasulullah used to follow yuhibbu mu'afiqata ahlil kitab. He used to prefer following ahlul kitab, especially when it was something that went against the following of ahlul awthan, those who were idol worshippers. This is where we see same people who are giving these ahadith. For example, Ibn Hajar said Prophet emphasized so much about fasting to the extent that people would make their children fast as well on Ashura. That was the extent of it. That's how mustahab it was. Sometimes there's something which is mustahab, and then there's mustahab and mu'akkad. We have the same thing. We have different things which we are mustahab, which we have are recommended. But then there's mustahab and mu'akkad, which is close to, for example, wujub. Like an example would be, for example, sacrificing on the day of Eidul Adha. Those who are hajis, it is wajib upon them. But those who have not gone for Hajj, it is not wajib upon them. But it is mustahab, highly recommended to go ahead and perform. We do it so much that we think that it is wajib, don't we? Until I used to believe the same way, that until I had gone to Hajj and had learned that it is only wajib on the Hajis, I thought it was something which was wajib on everyone. That's how highly recommended it was. So that is mustahab mu'akkad. We see the same Ibn Hajar who says that Prophet emphasized so much about fasting on the day of Ashura that even the people would make their children, he emphasized about the children as well, make the children, atfal, go ahead and fast as well. Same Ibn Hajar says in another hadith, La tashabbuhu bil Yahud wa Nasara. One who's saying Rasulullah used to follow the Yahud and Nasara, preferred following them, he quotes a hadith in his same book, Fathul Bari. He says, La tashabbuhu bil Yahud wa Nasara. Do not copy or follow or resemble or act or prefer, as far as the actions are concerned, Yahud and Nasara. Here, very quickly in a couple of minutes, I know I'm running out of my time, we want to clarify from their own books, from the books of Ahl Sunnah, how some of these things are contradictory. Fakhr Razi, great scholar of Ahl Sunnah, he says this, سَأَنَّ عُمَرْ تَعْلَعَ وَرَقَةً مِنَ التَّوْرَاتِ فَغَضَبَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Second Khalifa was reading some awraq from Tawrat. غَضَبَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Prophet became infuriated. He was angry. That why are you reading them? وَقَالَ لَوْ كَانَ مُوسَى حَيًّا لَمَّا وَسَعَهُ إِلَّا اتِّبَاعِي وَلَمَّا لَمْ يَكُنْ كَذَلِكَ عَلِمْنَا أَنَّهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ مُتَعَبِّدًا بِالشَّرْعِ أَحَدِ الْحُجَّةِ. He says, Umar, why are you reciting this? If Musa was alive today, even he would have followed me. Why are you following that which is matruk? Yeah, as far as your gaining knowledge is concerned, that's another thing. But you read and then you start adopting that is something which is not allowed. So Prophet is telling even one of his caliphs to not read it. Why? Because if Musa was here today, he would not be reading that. He would be reading what I have brought. He would have been my follower. Also in other place says, Lam yakun muta'abbidan qabla an-nubuwwa wala ba'daha bi shari'atihi. He was not following any other shariat prior to his nubuwwat. According to them, he became Nabi at the age of 40, prior to the nubuwwat or after the nubuwwat. Again, this is by Abul Husain Basri in his book Al-Mu'tamad. He says he was not following any other shariat prior to it or afterwards. So this is just to defend what Rasulullah has been accused of and ascribed of in their books by their own scholars, Fakhr Razi and other people who are trying to defend Rasulullah, that he did not do anything out of the ordinary by following the other divine religion. Salawat bheji Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Lastly, there are also, after having proven that it had nothing to do with the day the Jews used to fast, it wasn't something that existed prior to Islam, it wasn't something that became mustahab when Prophet entered Medina or something. This is something which is created, as I quoted a hadith earlier initially, by Ma'sumin from our own books. We get the idea as to why this was brought about. We see that when we refer to history, we understand the change of the year in the Jewish calendar is, is not entirely based on the lunar calendar the way we have the lunar calendar. So it would be very, very improbable for 10th of Muharram to fall on the same day that they perform their fast. When do they perform their fast? Yom Kippur, right? Yom Kippur is basically Yom Kaffara. In Arabic, it's Yom Kaffara, the day of atonement. That's when they fast. It falls on the 10th day of their 7th month, Tashrin al-Awwal, which is September or October. Every year it's going to be in September or October when it falls. So they're not following the lunar calendar. How is it possible for the 10th of Muharram to fall on the same day that the Jews used to fast? Jews used to fast on the day which is known as Yom Kippur, Yom Kaffara. Secondly, we also look at it from this aspect that this is being mentioned by Tabari. According to Tabari in his Tariq, and Ibn Athir in his Kamil fi Tariq, Ibn Hajar Asqalani in Fath Bari of Sahih Bukhari, he said that the day when Prophet entered Medina, these people are saying, according to the Hadith, Prophet entered Medina and he saw Jews fasting. It was only one day, right? One day or so that they would fast. So he must have run into them the day he entered, they were fasting. He said, but Prophet, when he entered, according to these three books that I mentioned, and I have the Hawala as well, Tariq al-Tabari, Ibn Athir's Al-Kamil, and Asqalani's Fath al-Bari. He says, they say that the day Prophet entered Medina after migration from Mecca was Monday, 12th of Rabiul Awwal. Was not even close to the 10th of Muharram. So again, this is something which we see a fabrication from the large factory of the fabrications that came from the factory of Banu Umayyah. And that is something, again, as I said earlier, if fasting is not something which is bad, you should go ahead and fast any day. We make fast for nadhr, we make fast which are mustahab. It is mustahab to fast. Fridays, for example, it is mustahab to fast. Thursdays, for example, it is mustahab to fast. 3 days in a month is mustahab to fast. And there are many other days that have been mentioned in the calendar year. It is mustahab to fast. There's no debate as far as the istihbab of fasting is concerned. What is being referred to over here, as our 8th Imam also said, that whoever is happy in our happy times and whoever is sad and feels sorrow when we are feeling sad and sorrow is someone who will be mahshur on the day of judgment with us. That is something that we were trying to please the ma'asumeen. Through pleasing ma'asumeen, inshallah, we're trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not on the contrary, try to please Banu Umayyah or their plan. The hadith that I had recited initially, just a reminder, they used to fast to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the victory that they had achieved. And so right away, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ, Allah only accepts from those who are muttaqeen. We see that giving sadaqah or zakat is something which is also recommended. Zakat is wajib. Sadaqah, for example, is something which is recommended. But where do you give it? When this caravan had entered city of Kufa, we see that people are throwing sadaqah towards, in the form of food, they're throwing sadaqah towards these Ahlul Bayt. Right away, the ladies, Janab Zainab and Kulthum, said, no, don't take this. Why? Because you cannot eat something which is sadaqah. You belong to the household of Rasulullah. Sadaqah is haram on the family of Rasulullah. Nothing wrong with giving sadaqah, but in certain conditions, it becomes something which is not allowed. And therefore, we see practices change as the time is also changing. We see that when this caravan entered, this musibat was musibat al-uzma. And once is entering into the darbar of Ibn Ziyad, some of the ulama mentioned that when a person recited that Dakhalat Zainab, that Zainab entered the darbar of Ibn Ziyad or darbar of Yazid, he said, don't recite anymore. Zainab entering the darbar of Yazid and Ibn Ziyad, that is enough of the masaib. How can Zainab of her caliber enter such places? This is the peak and the maximum masaib that could you ever have. But nonetheless, Janab Zainab, she enters mutanakkiratan. These are the words of the hadith or the narrator or the ravi, that she entered in a way that nobody notices, and she goes and she sits on the side. And when she sits on the side, so that she does not let anyone know that she has come in, even her Kaniz who are with her, they go ahead and circle around Janab Zainab so that no na-mahram could lay his eyes on Janab Zainab, because the head is open, it's uncovered. This is the same Kufa where Janab Zainab had entered earlier 20 years ago in the form that she was the daughter of Amirul Mu'mineen, where she was respected, where nobody has seen her. This was a place where she used to give lectures on tafsir of Quran. And the shurafa who were witnessing this incident are the same people whom Janab Zainab used to teach. And that's why one of the conditions Janab Zainab had, he said, don't let the shurafa of this city enter into the prison. Don't let them come into the prison. She did not want to face those people. How could you forget in the matter of 20 years that Zainab used to teach you, and now you want to come and see us in this way? Nonetheless, this event happens. Ibn Ziyad sees, he says that who is this woman who's entered in the form mutanakkiratan, that nobody can see her, and she has hid herself. Right away nobody answered. He repeated his question. One of the Kaniz answered by saying, Hadihi Zainabu binti Ali binti Fatima binti Rasulullah. This is Zainab binti Fatima binti Rasulullah. Why is she saying Zainab, daughter of Fatima, daughter of Rasulullah? Maybe this person who's calling upon Janab Zainab in this fashion might have some heart by hearing the name of Janab Fatima Zahra, might have some heart by hearing the name of Rasulullah, saying that who have I brought into my darbar? This is not an ordinary individual. This is someone who's the daughter of Rasulullah. Nonetheless, he speaks. This is where we see that Ibn Ziyad is sitting on his pulpit and he's striking the head of Imam Husain. He's got the stick in his hand and he's striking the teeth of Imam Husain. He's striking on the lips of Imam Husain. And this is where Zayd ibn Arqam, one of the Ashab of Rasulullah, he says, Wallahi, O Ibn Ziyad, I have seen with my own eyes, Hadan Shafatan, I have seen with my own eyes that Rasulullah used to kiss these same lips. And today, the day has come that you are striking with your stick on these lips. Allahu Akbar. Zayd ibn Arqam, when he said that, Ibn Ziyad became angry. He said, if you weren't so old, I would have gotten you killed right here. He leaves that place. When he leaves that place, he says, I was on top of the roof in my house. And when I was on top of the roof in my house, I saw the head of Imam Husain was being taken around in the streets of Kufa. And the ayat that Imam Husain was reciting, it was the ayat from Surah Kahf. He said, Inna Ashab al-Kahf, O people, this the story of Ashab al-Kahf wal-Raqim, Kanu min ayatina ajaba. Was it something that was marvelous for you? Was it something that was astonishing for you? And he said, no, Husain, seeing you in this fashion, up on the spear and reciting the ayat of Quran, in the state that your head has been separated with your body, this is more ta'ajjub hour for me. This is more marvelous for me. Nonetheless, Janab Zainab finally speaks up. Ibn Ziyad addresses her. She says he says, how did you see what Allah has done to you? She said, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. I do not see this except there's beauty in it. We achieved what Rasulullah wanted. We achieved what Allah wanted. These people went towards Shahada. This was something which was demanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where Imam Zainul Abidin stands up with all the shackles that he's with. He stands up and he says to his aunt, oh Pupi Amma, step aside, let me speak to this person. He's not worthy that you speak to him. This is where Ibn Ziyad, when he sees Imam Sajjad, he said, how is this person alive? What is your name? He said, Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn. He said, did not Allah kill Ali ibn Husayn in the battlefield? Imam said, no, I had a brother Ali Akbar who was killed by the enemies. Allah did not kill him. Imam started to speak, and then Ibn Ziyad said, kill this person right away. Janab Zainab stands in front of Hazrat Sajjad. She says, oh Ibn Ziyad, how much blood are you going to shed? Have you not killed enough of our people? Have you not killed enough of our men? If you're going to kill Sajjad, you will have to go through Zainab. Ala lanatullah al-qawm al-zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. पर अल्लाह हमारी इस बात कबूल फरमा, हम गुनाहगार हैं, हमारे गुनाहों से दरगुजर फरमा, हमें अहले बैत अलैहिस्सलाम के नक्श कदम चलने की तौफीक अता फरमा, हमें उनकी तालीमात पर अमल करने की तौफीक अता फरमा, हमारे इमाम की ज़ुहूर में ताजील फरमा, हमें उनके आवान व अंसार में शुमार कर। ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. مات الحسين.